Mrs. Nye, could you please, let me just start. Today is September 9th, 2020, and this is a regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Chandler Unified School District. Mrs. Nye, could you please do our roll call? Present.
Here.
David Evans. Mr. Evans?
Here, sorry.
Here.
Mrs. McGee?
Here.
Thank you, Mrs. Nye. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We'll go ahead and get started with some routine business. The first is to approve the minutes of the September 2nd, 2020 special board meeting. Could I please get a motion for approval?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 2nd, 2020 special board meeting as presented.
I second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of the September 2nd, 2020 meeting, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Our second item of routine business is the approval and ratification of payroll and our expenditure vouchers. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve and ratify the approval and ratifications, rather, of payroll and expenditure vouchers as presented.
I second.
All those in favor of approving and ratifying the payroll and expenditure vouchers, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Castile, is there correspondence?
We have none this evening, Madam President.
Thank you. Our next item will be presented by Mr. Locke. There you are. I was looking for you at the seat rather than at the podium. And he's going to present the public comments that were submitted online this week.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Castile. During this time of social distancing, we have created the online opportunity for the public to provide feedback for items the governing board will address on any topic. The opportunity is promoted on our board webpage, allowing for the convenience of providing feedback from the comfort of your home or smartphone. For now, this replaces the citizen comment section that required individuals to come to the district to fill out a blue form prior to the start of the meeting. State statute prohibits the governing board from discussing an item that is not on the agenda, but they listen to these concerns and often request staff follow up on any questions. With our current format, we are able to provide board members feedback in advance to give them time to process the information and ask questions of the district administration prior to the meeting. This process also gives us time to sort responses by categories and provides a big picture view in addition to all the verbatim responses. We're providing the responses on the governing board website for all to see in an effort to maintain transparency. This week, we heard from 462 people. Not surprising, as the top response continues to center around school reopening issues. Let me give you a breakdown of the responses. 263 people, or 38%, expressed an interest to open schools now. 143 people, or 21%, expressed the desire to open at the second quarter or when the data says it's safe. 57 people, or 8%, are related to giving parents choices of in-person or online learning. 27 people, or 4%, are interested in hybrid learning options. 40 people, or 6%, are considering or have left CUSD. 6 people, or 1%, asked to keep Google Classroom interactive going forward. 53 people, or 8%, expressed health and safety concerns. 21 respondents, or 3%, expressed thanks or appreciation of the board. 26 people, or 4%, let us know about online curriculum, grading, or technical issues. 9 people, or 1%, weighed in on athletics, mostly expressing an interest to be able to watch their children as spectators. Other topics such as masks or board concerns make up 36 answers, or 5%. Finally, other curriculum concerns were expressed by 7 people, or 1%.
Excuse me, Mr. Locke. For an individual who's on the bridge, could you please mute your phones or your microphone, your radio, or other extraneous noises coming through? I believe it was the individual who logged on just the last one.
An individual who's on the bridge, could you please mute your phone or your microphone, your radio or other external sources?
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
Obviously, those
Locke.
numbers do not add up to 100%. That's because people could offer opinion on more than one subject. You have all the submissions verbatim for your consideration and for the public to view.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. And could you just, so when you're saying that some of these, that there were people that were in several different categories.
Correct.
You copied the whole comment that they had into that section, so there might
Correct.
be, you might see a comment two times or maybe more, depending on whether they addressed
And
more
you
than
can-
one issue.
Correct. And you can see that some of those would correspond, especially the first few related to school reopening and interest to open schools now or when it's healthy. Having parents have a choice of online versus in-person instruction, interest in hybrid, those are all typically it's part of the same response. And once in a while, it's a response totally different than that, but you kind of see that pattern.
Thank you. Do any of our board members have any questions for Mr. Locke on this? On some of them? Okay, well, I hope all the board members
Thank you.
have gotten a chance to look through all of the comments so that those can inform us what our community is thinking. I appreciate everyone who wrote in and submitted comments. We do like to hear from you and appreciate you taking the time to let us know what you're thinking. Our next is a presentation on social emotional learning. It's an update by Mrs. Sandy Cooper.
Thank you so much. Take my mask off since I'm up here by myself. Madam President, members of the board, as you recall, you had requested that we update you on all the efforts that are going on to meet our social, emotional, and I would expand that even to our cultural, mental, physical needs of our students. And so I'm happy to be here tonight just to allow me to share a little bit about the updates as we meet these needs for our learners so that they can thrive as learners in our classrooms. So someone may ask the question, why are school districts focused on social emotional needs of our students? Why do the physical needs of our students, or how do they impact the readiness for students to learn? Why would a school disaggregate their academic data by race or by gender? I thought the purpose of public education was solely academic. Well, yes, the ultimate goal is academic achievement, but we know that in order to learn, students' human needs have to be met. So I like this little simple depiction of the human needs that potentially get in the way of learning. And if you start at the bottom, the physiological needs, that's food, clothing, shelter, a safe home, adequate sleep, physical health. Have you ever tried to concentrate when you're hungry, or if you have a toothache? You'll know that it's fairly difficult. Safety is not just our physical safety of our students, but that's important, but it's their social safety, their cultural safety, emotional safety, their psychological safety. Have you ever walked to school with a knot in your stomach because the day before a fellow student who you didn't even know called you a racial slur or made a disparaging remark about your weight? How do you think that impacts your readiness to learn? Belonging. Students need to belong. They need to feel included. We know that having a relationship with a caring adult is a key to student learning. But it's not just adult-to-student relationships. Students need good relationships, healthy relationships with other students to learn. And then esteem. Students need to be respected for who they are, and they need to respect others. It's reciprocal. They need to know they can do it. They need to have a feeling of achievement and know they can succeed. And when all those things are met, and those things are in place, we've then removed the barriers to students' learnings, and they're free to learn, to thrive, to really become their best selves. And those of you who know me well know I'm really from human resources, so I'm just going to tell you that humans, our adults, our employees are just taller students, right? And they all have exactly these same human needs. Our crossing guards, our secretaries, teachers, principals, even the superintendent and the governing board members, I believe that y'all have the same kind of human needs that need to be met for you to thrive, for you to be your best selves, for even as an organization. So it's really important that we focus in on the human needs of our employees and our students first so that we can move forward with the learning and the business of academics. So I'm really pleased to be working with this dedicated team of administrators this year. Their primary focus is to identify and remove barriers to student learning. So that's basically what it is. Kim Marshall is our Executive Director of Student Services. Her primary role is to identify and remove the physical, mental, and behavioral barriers for students with special needs so that they can be successful. Monica Romero and her team identify and address the unique needs of our migrant, indigenous, and our homeless students, our English language learners, so that they can be successful. Tanya Smith, she is the Director of Safety and Security. Her job is to remove barriers to our physical safety. Dr. Adama Salou is our Director of Education, Equity and Inclusion, and her job is to identify individual and groups of students who may not have equitable access to learning, or they don't feel included because of their race or culture or language or gender or beyond. Katie Kale directs our care center. Her primary focus is physical needs of our students and families. The care center, as you know, provides food, shelter, and medical and dental services for children and families who do not otherwise have access. And then Brenda Vargas is our Director of Counseling and Social Services. She works directly with our counselors and our social workers to equip them to identify and remove those social and emotional barriers to learning. And finally, Abby Druck is part of this team. She's the Director of Human Resources and Professional Pathways. And so she collaborates with all these department leaders to help provide the professional development to equip the adults. Just to go back a little bit, as you're aware, over the last 3 years, we've spent a lot of time and effort looking at our data to identify barriers to student learning. We involved a wide representation of our Chandler community, both parents and staff. We started to customize our professional development, customize really all of our efforts so that we can align it very specifically to a mission and our desired outcome. During this process, we revisited the mission. As you can see, our mission, vision, and core values of the school district are there on the left. We revisited those, and then we created or articulated in writing a desired outcome, and that was to provide equitable educational opportunities for all students in a safe and inclusive learning environment. And from there, that desired outcome, we developed a roadmap with pathways and strategies to help move us forward. We published the roadmap, we got community input and feedback, and we made some changes based upon that. One of the strategies that I thought was worthy of mentioning tonight is culturally responsive. And so one of our strategies is to become more culturally responsive as adults. And what does that mean? It means that we gain an awareness, understanding, knowledge, and skills to effectively interact with individuals from a wide variety of backgrounds and cultural experiences. And we're doing that by building awareness and understanding of our adults about our students and families, especially those who have backgrounds different from our own. And then also self-reflecting to identify if we have any biases or assumptions that could impact our ability to relate with a student or even with a coworker. and maybe impact our ability to prepare that engaging lesson that would really appeal to our students and based upon their backgrounds. So I just want to use just a quick example of religion. So in December, I don't know if any of you got to attend, but we hosted representatives from different faith backgrounds. And I think we had 6 or 7 different religions represented. And the purpose was really not to promote any religious beliefs at all, but it was really just that we asked our faith leaders to help us understand some basic tenets of their faith, because we wanted to know if there's anything we need to know about those students so that we can provide a good, safe, and inclusive learning environment for them. And the evening was very informative. It strengthened our own cultural responsiveness for the students that we serve in our classrooms. We learned some myths about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, at least I did. We learned why students with Jehovah's Witness backgrounds don't say the Pledge of Allegiance. We learned what to expect of students during Ramadan and how we can be more respectful about their practices that happen a lot of times during our school days. So just an example of as we have moved into this process, we are being very diligent and targeted that we're doing so with a very specific mission, and that's promoting student learning in a climate where they feel safe and respected, where they really belong. So earlier this year, I provided you with a document that was, again, a collaborative effort from all these departments. And in the document, I think we showed you a lot of the activities and the learning and the efforts that are going on across the board within the departments. So tonight, really what I want to do is just give you a little update, highlight some of the things that are going on. And then I had these wonderful individuals on speaker, and we'll save a little time at the, not speaker, but on the phone, so we'll save a little time at the end for questions. I also want you to know that these department leaders are all working together. We're meeting on a regular basis, we're collaborating, we're making sure that we are supporting each other's common goals. We don't want anything to fall through the cracks, and we just have so much overlap between the departments that I think that is a very effective way to operate. And then along with those department leaders, especially during the last few months, the incredible efforts at the school level by teachers and support staff, counselors, and principals have just been amazing. So now more than ever, our human needs of our students have been great, and they really have affected their ability to learn. And so CUSD employees across the district have really stepped up to meet their human needs. So for tonight, I've organized the activities in these departments in 3 different areas. One is equipping staff, providing staff with professional development or the tools that they need to meet our students' needs, supporting our students, and partnering with parents. So equipping staff is the first one. Again, there's so much more than this, but I've condensed it into a few highlights for tonight. Excuse me. In the Counseling and Social Services Department, with the counselors and social workers, they've been doing a lot of training across the board. Hope and Resiliency. Act on Facts is our suicide prevention. In our suicide prevention, every member of our school district participated in that training. Again, we're focused on prevention, but there are times when there's a possibility of the postvention if something happens, and so they are also prepared for that as well. Domestic violence, inequity, and inclusion. We're working particularly, thank you. We're working particularly with a new training that I believe is going to start this week with family engagement, really to capitalize on what's been going on with this partnership with families and to work with families as active partners, really to reimagine what that homeschool partnership could look like and really make it flourish. I like the statement from the training. It says, when families are authentically engaged, listened to as active partners, and viewed as co-teachers, students achieve. And I believe that training starts this week. That'll be our counselors, our social workers, our representatives from every school, a team of representatives from every school, so that they can be trained and take that information back to their site. And then in January, all of our certified staff will be doing training in equitable classroom practices. There's culturally relevant training going on to try to help our teachers and adults understand how to best work with homeless, refugee, migrant, and our indigenous communities. At safety and security, those security workers, security guards really do have a lot of interaction with our students, and they've been doing a great job in keeping them up to speed, giving them all the training really that our teachers get has also been provided for our security guards. They've done safe talk training. They've done training on crisis prevention and also learning to deal with students with mental health issues. And then supporting our students. And I want to start with talking a little bit more about the counseling and social services area. I've given you a packet of handouts just because I had too much information to cover tonight, so you can take that home and read it at your leisure. And I also encourage you to get on our Counseling and Social Services website. There's a lot of information and resources for our teachers and for our families. But one of the things that's happening in this area is that our elementary teachers are beginning each day, now virtually, but they'll do it in person soon. But they're beginning each day with a lesson to help build the skills of the students and how to deal with their social and emotional needs. The counselors and social workers at each one of the elementaries and secondaries are working to intervene with students who have needs. They're doing it small groups, they're doing it one-on-one. They've been doing it virtually and they're doing it in person, just really whatever that the children need. They do that based upon a parent request or a student request. They're doing a lot of collaboration with the students to identify, collaboration with the teachers to identify the students who have specific needs. The counselors have worked very hard on developing age-appropriate lessons with supplemental activities and resources, Tier 1 and Tier 2 lessons. They put those lessons in a database so you can share them across the district, so that's information that doesn't need to be replicated and it could be shared. And I've got just a few, I think I've given you some of this, but I want to highlight a few of the topics of the lessons. At the elementary level, I can embrace change is one of the lessons. I can use a growth mindset. I will celebrate with myself and others. I can return to school happy, healthy, and safe. At the junior high, signs of suicide is one of the lessons. Understanding mental health, the importance of self-care. At the high school, signs and symptoms of someone struggling. Or one of the lessons is no need to be an expert, just be a friend. And then at the Tier 2 level, there are lessons on coping, lessons on dealing with grief, lessons on dealing with a loss or divorce or anxiety or anger management. So the counselors have really got together and collaborated to do a good job of developing these resources and then sharing them across the district.
Can I just ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
So on the high school ones, how is that delivered? Is that like by website, or is it embedded into the classes? Or I'm just curious for the high school kids, that's a little harder to squeeze in
I'm
there.
going to do my best to answer that question, and then if I will let Brenda Vargas, who's on the phone, just confirm that at the end, if you don't mind, Ms.
sure.
Bruner.
Thank you.
But I believe that these lessons, I know the counselors have set up their Google Meets lessons, and they're doing lessons online virtually. So I believe there's a lot of in-person engagement with students at the high school, junior high, and the elementary level. They've created a student wellness page, and I think I've given you a little information on that. And then one of the things that's new this year, our counselors developed a virtual calming room. So again, I encourage you to get on the website. And there's a lot of good feedback on the virtual calming room. It's really just a vehicle to kind of deal with a stressful moment for a student. And I know the parents have been tapping into this as well. You can do anything from meditation to watching the baby polar bears on a live cam at the San Diego Zoo. So it's just a wide variety of things. Exercise. physical exercise. There's just all kinds of things that kind of help a student kind of regain and deal with some of that stress and then get back on track with their learning. I noticed that there had been, or asked this question, there's been about over 1,400 visits on our Counseling and Social Services website just in the month of August. So I do believe these resources they're providing for our teachers and for our families are getting used. At the Care Center, supporting our students with in-person kindergarten prep programs. The immunization clinic is back up and running. Hearing and vision screening is back up. Dental services for preventative is back up and running, and restorative care will return soon. And then they're planning the food bank and the toy distribution as a drive-through, but those things will still be available in Thanksgiving and in December. For equity and inclusion, we have identified some focus groups of students and just reaching out to them in small groups to ask the question, how are you doing and what do you need from us? Our students really do know what they need, and that's been amazing and very powerful, and we're doing that with several focus groups over the next few months. For our special populations, they're working with many home referrals based upon their need. Could be a domestic violence, it could be COVID in the home. Unemployment obviously is something that a lot of our families are dealing with. A lot of language barriers, so the special populations department has really been working and helping schools bridge that language barrier gap, providing technology and access to those populations of students, talking to the students about the availability for grants for medical and for vision testing. And I think, as you know, our special education students, many of them, I think there's over 500 students that are back in class in person now, receiving their instruction in person. So there's been a lot going on to meet the needs of those kids in person and also continue to meet the needs of the special needs kids virtually. Our therapeutic counselors, school psychologists, and counselors are really working on helping with student inventories to help our counselors at the schools and also our teachers identify any issues. I know that the special education teachers are doing morning meetings with the in-person and the virtual students to make sure that they integrate and build that community so that when they do come back, they have the community built. So I know they're doing a lot just to make sure that that works and using technology. And then their speech and occupational physical therapists, even though they haven't been seeing kids in person, they've identified the needs of our students and are providing that therapy for them. And then we're partnering with our parents in so many ways. Again, at the Counseling and Social Services Department, they've been providing educational topics. As you can see, those list of topics: communication, the teen brain, teen depression, anxiety. They're kicking off or have kicked off a Spanish-speaking podcast for our families, Confident Parents, Confident Kids series podcast. I mentioned their website. There's a website, their community wellness page. There is a section on COVID-19 community resources, and they've got lots of resources, websites, and podcasts to help parents deal with this pandemic. I think I've given you a little sample of a flyer, really, just to help parents support their children during the pandemic, and how do they support their children. The Care Center, their food bank is up and running again. Lots of parent education, immunization, not just for children, but for adults. Of course, the Southwest Behavioral Health Center operates there, giving individual and family counseling. And then the Women's, Infants, and Children's Services, and they're still servicing our families with remote appointments. And then I got some information from the schools about what they're doing, and I just feel like I can't do justice to it. In fact, I have a few things that I wanted to share with you tonight, but they overall have just gone above and beyond. And one of the things that you found out real quickly with our staff at the schools, teachers and principals and all support staff, when the students couldn't come to us, they went to the students. They brought care packages to their homes. They met their physical needs, emotional needs. They, get ready for school packages. They've really just gone out of their way to get into the families' lives and care for them. So they've just been amazing, and I think I will maybe send you a few of these examples and encourage you to talk to some schools about some of the unique things that they're doing at the schools to make sure that they're meeting all these human needs of the students. So 2 takeaways tonight, and then I do have these great department
Cooper,
leaders. Yes?
you didn't do the partners with the parents? Did you want to go through that slide?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you.
You bet.
Did I do this one, but not this
Yeah,
one? Thank
correct.
you. Equity and inclusion, we have identified the same focus groups for parents too, asking them the question, how are you doing through all of this? How are you and what do you need from us? What do your students need from us? We'll have the lecture and film series starting soon for our community and our parents. The community roundtables we had last year, we're waiting until we can do that in person because it is something that really needs to be done more face-to-face. So we're hoping to start that back up in the spring. And then our Equity Advisory Board will be meeting again, I believe, before the end of the month. Again, special populations, they have really had, that's our externally funded programs under the direction of Monica Romero. They've had a lot of walk-in traffic from parents and just supporting whatever need comes in the door, whether it's, again, a rental. It might be filling out paperwork. I think they've done a lot of helping people just fill out paperwork and find the access to the resources that they need. Again, coordinating donations from the community and providing those to our parents and to our families. And then special education, again, sometimes the needs of the students can't be met within the school. And so contracting for behavioral counseling or counseling that's outside of the school day. And then just that training and support for families. And I'm sorry I missed that very important slide. So 2 takeaways, I think tonight, at least for me, and maybe 3, I'll throw my last one in there, is when we talk about meeting human needs, social, emotional, cultural, physical, mental, we're not just talking about students. I heard from our principals, they all started with, we have all of these things we're doing for our students, but our employees and our teachers and all of our employees have the same needs. And so here are all the things we're doing just to meet the needs of our employees as well. And the other one is just now more than ever. I can't imagine another time in our history where we've had a greater need to meet the human needs and social emotional needs of the folks around us. And so it's really now more than ever. And my third kind of takeaway, or maybe as I end it, this group is talking about launching a message, really a message of hope as the students return, a message of healing, a message of really, I call it grace, meaning that we're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt. I know that I saw our elementaries were talking about care, I shouldn't say before core, I'm not sure if that was the word, but when students come back, really helping them acclimate into the classroom and back into school. It is not going to be easy, and we all need to be prepared for that and know what the stressors were on our students' lives and our parents' lives, and then how can we prepare to welcome them back and make sure that they feel a sense of hope, like tomorrow is going to be a better day, which is what we're all hoping for. So we're focused on that and putting something together that we can roll out when students return. So thank you. I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I'd love to take your questions, especially because I can turn them over to the experts on the line.
Madam President, I would just like to thank Mrs. Cooper. I know that at a study session this summer, the board asked some questions and wanted to make sure our departments weren't working in silos, that they were collaborating and working together. And she's been the person that has pulled them together and made time to help to help make the work collaborative. And they've done a remarkable job in a very short period of time, but I think it's because they see the benefit of working together and making sure we're not duplicating out of the various departments, but we're enhancing and helping one another. So I just want to thank Mrs. Cooper for stepping up and doing that with us, and all of the directors and executive directors that are on the phone right now listening, and just so appreciate their hard work and getting this pulled together, and it's only can get better from here.
Thank you, Dr. Castile. Mrs. Cooper, thank you so much for your presentation. And I will say, when we do perhaps have one of the other directors talk, if you would please identify yourself, because we won't be able to really know who you are unless you tell us who you are. So, but do we have any questions from the board? Ms. Love.
Sorry, I had to move my mic because I couldn't see my light. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the presentation. Like, it was wonderful, and I think that we were asking those questions this summer regarding working together and more collaboratively, and I'm really glad to see that. I'm really glad the event with the faith leaders, that sounded wonderful, and I wish I could have attended that event. And then I know that I personally attended the Equity and CEA book club over the summer, where we read Push Out, and I'm glad to see that that's starting up again with another book that I'm hoping to join, and I'm hoping that we all can join. I also do want to acknowledge that you said that the transition back is not going to be an easy one, and I think that's something that we talked about last week, so I'm really glad that that's being acknowledged and that we have a plan moving forward on that. That makes me feel a lot better too. So my questions, I have a few. So what are the plans for our principals and site leaders when kids come back to school among all the racial unrest in our community? We tend to talk a lot about COVID, but within this whole COVID transition, there's been a lot that's happened. There's been Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, countless other names. And we're seeing a divide in our country, we're seeing a divide in our community, and we can expect to show that, of course, in the classroom, right? That's going to show up. What's our plan to address that? Okay.
And I will try my best to answer that question. I know I have Dr. Slew on the phone to help. But that, when we have focused on the human needs or the social, emotional, cultural needs of our students, that has been a really primary focus, especially over the summer as we prepare to welcome our students of color back to the classrooms, knowing that there could be some, certainly they have had some trauma and stress, and how are we going to acclimate and make sure that they feel comfortable and safe come back to the classroom? That's been a conversation with our principals. We have done some training so that people understand what, the effects of the racial turmoil and how that affects individuals and helps families. When we talk to our students and parents, that was a focus in that conversation too, is what do you need? So we're taking the feedback from our students, and we haven't got that all worked out yet, but we're taking their feedback and putting it into action into our roadmap and our strategies, so that, again, part of it is going to be an awareness and understanding that some of our students' experiences will be very different. Each student experiences this differently, and so we have got to individualize our approach to them when they do return.
Okay. And then how do we plan to support victims of racialized trauma, and how would we support the perpetrators of racialized trauma coming back? Okay. Because it's really a twofold process, right? Like, you don't want to throw any student out, right? Or throw anything away. We want to be more inclusive, and we want to work with both victims and perpetrators. How are we doing that?
I'm going to answer that question from some of the words of our students, okay, who said, we want students to be educated so they understand the experience, but we do not want it to be punitive. So we want, again, the approach to these two, the victim and the perpetrator, as you would call it, we want that to be an educational model so that if, and I'll just go back to my example of a racial slur, if the racial slur happens, instead of a 3-day, maybe 5-day suspension, what kind of education can we do preventive and also to really restore the relationship to and help to build some capacity on that other side so they understand the hurt that it's caused.
Okay. And I know you mentioned like the forums too, and that was one takeaway that you got from the forums, but what were some other things that you got out of the forums from the students? And it sounds like there was one with parents too.
Parents and students.
That helped us kind of shape this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to, let's see, I'm trying to think of there were some themes there. There were themes along the curriculum and instruction. Basically, one of the things that we heard from students is in curriculum and instruction, we want to see ourselves, basically. Mm-hmm. And there was some encouragement to have adults on campus so that they see themselves in the adults on campus.
Like parent volunteers?
Parent volunteers,
okay.
It really doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think just, again, getting some diversity of role models on campus for our students. Overall, I would say the students were very complimentary. I took great hope at the fact that they do feel, for the most part, safe in their schools. They love their schools. They want to contribute to their schools. They were amazing and powerful, just they're communicators. But they really had some very specific things that they felt like would help. A lot of that deals really with education, and that's where we are. How do we, again, become culturally responsive, build that awareness and understanding, not just with our adults, but with our students as well.
And then I think my final question on this is, with this forum, was it different forums, like we had primary forum, secondary forum, and then the parents, was it split up that way, or did we include primary in that forum at all? Because I know that when we have these discussions, we tend to focus on secondary, just because secondary is more verbal and, in your face a lot of times. But have we done a forum for a primary?
I'm not sure that we've done any kind of focus group for our primary. The forums that we did focus on the secondary high school students, but we do our student perception survey each year, and that student perception survey goes down to our primary grades. Is it second? I'm trying to remember exactly, second grade on up. And so we do glean in a very appropriate way, age-appropriate way, how they're feeling about their safety and if they feel cared for. And that information can be disaggregated, again, by gender, by race, by lots of different ways, so that we can see if there's anything, any place or anything across a district that needs to be built upon.
I like that. I do think that it would be beneficial to at least get some of our primary kids in a room. I used to work as a 6 to 12 therapist and a birth to 5 therapist, and they have some really great things that they have to say about how they see the world, about race, about their bodies and mental health, and all of those great things that we don't really talk to little kids about. So that's my only critique, is that I would really like to see our primary included in some kind of focus group if at all possible.
And Ms. Lovett, and I appreciate that. I do want to mention that as I look through what the schools were doing, the counselors are spending a lot of time at every level with students and really ask them how they are, what can we do to help you. So I think in that, that setting, that's happening across the district, and I should have mentioned that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think I'm going to go to one of our individuals on the phone. Mrs. McGee, do you have any questions for Mrs. Cooper?
I do not. I just want to thank Mrs. Cooper and her team for the excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. Sorry for the hold up there. Actually, thank you, Mrs. Cooper. One of the things is this is an ongoing process, so it's a great presentation, but this is ongoing work. So I just wanted to mention that. One of the first things you said was actually about supporting one another's common goals, and I know I've really pushed on that. Supporting one another's common goals from the point of equity and inclusion, social emotional learning, mental health, special needs groups, and then Katie Kale's group of folks who utilize the care center. Would you be willing, each of you, to just talk about how that is working and what are as this presentation talks about, barriers to trying to coordinate your efforts?
Mr. Evans, you are requesting that each one of our department leaders speak to that?
Yeah, just how, really just how that can actually happen amongst the different groups if possible, because there are plenty of things that we wouldn't think about as board members that are critical to the services that each of you offer. But, just maybe even an example of how the different areas work together would be helpful, I guess.
Hi, this is Kim Marshall. Do you want me to go ahead and start, Sandy?
Yes, please. In fact, I just brought up the names, so we'll just go down one by one. Thank you, Kim.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Evans and governing board members and Dr. Castile. One of the projects and some of the barriers that we've been working on in student services, encompassing a large portion of our the students that we serve, are students on IEPs, and the barriers of trying to provide their services in a virtual or distance learning manner. We've asked our teachers to work and collaborate like no other time before, and it's really been such a positive experience for many, many of our students that the virtual experiences that we didn't think honestly might work have actually surprised us all. And some of those barriers in collaborating with general education teachers, with our counselors on campus, our parents are helping as the home support. It's actually just been such a huge group effort to help some of our most vulnerable students be successful. I know in working with Monica Romero's team for our students that are having some home insecurity issues and trying to figure out district of residence, what kind of services that they're going to need, and really cooperating and working together to overcome some of those barriers while we have been assigned to home. As we then ventured to bring students back in for in-person services beginning on August 5th, we started out with lower numbers, but as each week went by, we had more and more students joining us for in-person services, not classes, but services. And I know that the parents were very appreciative, and the school sites were collaborative in meeting the needs of all of the students to make sure everybody stayed safe. I know in working also with Dr. Salou and Brenda Vargas's team, our psychologists and therapeutic counselors have been engaged in working across the different departments for the racialized trauma, and as well as the suicide prevention and some of the other initiatives coming out of counseling and social services. So we are really all very much of a blended tribe, so to speak, and we all have different lenses from which to view our students' needs as well as our staff. So those are the kinds of taking a 30-foot view of what's been happening from our point of view. Those are the kinds of things that have been working in collaboration with the other departments from a student services perspective. Again, also with the health services department that is underneath student services. That health department is basically with Lindsay Hartley as the director has been, she infiltrates all of us. So she has been a huge asset in making sure that all of our staff and students are healthy and safe as we move forward in opening the school year.
Monica.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for your question. Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board, and Dr. Castile. In regards to barriers and working together, I'd first like to begin by explaining that our special populations do have specific needs. The examples I'd like to give is we have 3 amazing federal program staff that work with these caseloads. The first example I'd like to give you is Phoenix Indian Center. Tia Gromczynski has set up with Phoenix Indian Center Zoom meetings with a cultural lens to provide that additional support to our students. The Phoenix Indian Center will provide internships, a variety with Bureau of Indian Affairs, Arizona Republic, local businesses, and these are the type of things that some of our special populations are yearning for: belonging, finding self-esteem, and likeness and success. The migrant program led by Lorena Garcia we have contracted with Mirna Pineda, is providing coaching, providing life skills with students and families in the areas of agricultural workers, the extreme types of living conditions that they live with, and that's the way we're meeting their needs. Our FIT program, who is excellent advocate, is Valerie Jerry, and we work hand in hand with Homeward Bound, a Pappas Foundation, as well as fans, compadres. They all provide stipends, and they also help us with enrichment workshops. Of course, everything is virtual, especially now with COVID. So those are some of the barriers as well as differences. But at the same time, we work very closely with our FIT population, with social workers and counselors. We couldn't make it without meeting weekly with our high schools, our counselors and social workers, to making sure we're meeting the needs, and as well as not duplicating, but making sure that we have met the specific needs of every student, because every student is very different. I would have to say that all departments, as far as special education and counseling, social work, equity, it's definitely a team effort with our large school district, and we're very blessed to have the leadership of Dr. Costello and Dr. Cooper to be able to provide the specific needs of all our students.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tanya Smith, the Director of Safety and Security. We started out the year August 4th. We had a half-day training day for all district security district-wide, secondary and elementary, at Chandler Center for the Arts. And Brenda's counseling and social services team provided 2 breakout groups, 25 security guards in each group, a half-day training for Safe Talk, which is suicide alertness training. And then we got back together for the second half of the day for legal update training as well. But we have been primarily our focus since we have returned back to school at the elementary level. What's great about the way we have it set up is that they have a CUSD vehicle. They're assigned 5 elementary schools each, and so they're mobile. So it's turned out to be an enormous asset, because when the sites need help and they want a home visit, we're able to provide that. At this time, we're asking that 2 people go. So sometimes it'll be like an elementary truancy officer with a security officer. Sometimes it'll be somebody from counseling social services with a security officer. They'll go to the home, say, we noticed that you haven't been, in school. Do you need help with something? We obtained technology brochures, both in English and in Spanish, and have been trying to assist at home with those people whenever we can. So our job has been changed a little bit, but our focus right now is to help as many children as we can, whether it's at the site or at their home.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Salou?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Evans, thank you for your question. Governing board members, Dr. Castillo, thank you for having our voice this evening at the table. Mrs. Cooper, thank you for such a wonderful presentation, so comprehensive, trying to capture all the things we are doing in CUSD. I'm like, wow, we do all of that. We show up every day to serve children and families in CUSD so our kids can perform, they can be excellent students. So the Maslow hierarchy that you put up there to really kind of capture the work we are doing through the lens of Maslow hierarchy of needs with our self-actualization at the top, that really echoed what we are doing in CUSD. So for equity, Mr. Evans, your question, how we're working together, I'm going to highlight the training we're doing this month from Scholastic, where this training is really, we're going to really highlight how I have with my colleagues, all 5 colleagues actually, to provide a really comprehensive training for our families and our parents in CUSD. COVID-19 caused a paradigm shift in teaching and learning across this country, a shift where we go to the homes of parents now instead of the kids coming to us. And they have really highlighted the need to engage parents and activate their voices and see parents as partners. With that being said, all my colleagues with counseling, social workers, psychologists, our care center, Monica's team, we're all coming together with school site equity teams to provide a training, a 3-hour training for everyone in CUSD, all our equity teams. We've been deliberate in CUSD to move this idea of parent engagement from title schools to all schools. All our families today are in a different place. And how do we support them? What does that support look like as we come in to support all our families? So it's really this marrying of our systems coming together. So how do we all get this training? And how do we really create this authentic relationship with our parents and our families? Whether you're at Castile High School or Chandler High School, whether you're at Bologna or Haley, whether you're at Conley or CTA Freedom, or whether you're at Riggs or you are at McGarver Spain, this idea that all our families and our parents need support. There's this shift in our country, the shift in schooling, right? And so I'm really, I plan with my colleagues. Abby and I are planning these meetings. Abby, Joke and I was planning, working with Brenda, going to our office, talking to Cam and Monica, and really trying to ensure that we're all part of this training. And so we have 10 days in CUSD, 10 different nights, from 4 to 7 or 4:30 to 7:30 at night doing the training. And every one of my colleagues named tonight, we all came together and said, yeah, we're going to do this together because we need the same message to engage all our parents and give that comprehensive support to do the work we are called to do. So that's what we're doing. That's just one example that we're doing in equity. Okay, again, the work we all talk about, this is all equity work. It's an equity umbrella, right? But really being intentional and deliberate in coming together and meeting this task that we are called to complete, which is to work together for our kids and our families in CUSD.
Thank you, Dr. Salou. Katie, Kale.
Yes, thank you. This is Katie Kale. I am the director of the Chandler Care Center. Madam President, board members, Dr. Castile, thank you for allowing us to join you this evening. And Mr. Evans, thank you so much for asking this question. I agree with what my colleagues have already said. I think there's so many pieces going on, and it's been so important for us to come together and sit around a table together and have conversations about what we're each doing to help reach these children and these families who, some of them are, in extreme amounts of need right now and need our support. So a couple of things just to highlight really quickly. One thing that we've found has increased recently is we have a food bank that has remained open year-round. We do have a Thanksgiving distribution coming up, which we are partnering with one of our neighbor food banks, Ascend, and also Chandler High School to provide a drive-through food bank service for Thanksgiving. But throughout school closures and throughout summer break, we were able to provide food boxes for families in need. And that includes reaching out to some of our schools' counselors and principals and teachers and allowing them to come in and pick up food boxes for some of our homebound residents. We've had a couple of principals come in and pick up food boxes for families that were dealing with COVID-19 in their home and couldn't leave to pick up food, so we're happy to be able to provide that service. We're also working with Dignity Health to do our back-to-school shot clinics, which are by appointment only now. We've reopened since May with that service, and we're providing dozens of shots per week for kids who need them to be able to go back to school in person. We also have flu shots starting tomorrow, actually, at the care center, which are free of charge to all adults and children, regardless of their insurance status or where they live. And we're providing 2 drive-through days for those clinics to be available for our community members. We're participating in the equity programs that Dr. Salou mentioned. I think that's really important. We deal with a diverse population at the care center, and their children and families from throughout the district who we serve. And so we feel it's important for our staff to be mindful of equity and inclusion measures and ensure that we're including those for our families as well as among our staff and volunteers. We are also a member of the Forest City Chandler group, which I know Monica Romero's team and Brenda's team are also active in, and we participated in the back to school event that happened in July, where we were able to provide, I think we ended up with about 3,500 backpacks stuffed with back to school supplies for families in need within the community. And programs like that would absolutely not work without the partnership that we have with the other departments within the district, as well as the community members and the city of Chandler. And then, of course, we're working to do a healthy return to our program. So we've reopened our dental clinic with Dignity Health, and we've been able to provide safely preventive dental care to children who are uninsured within our community. We have hearing and vision screening available for families. Of course, we have our food bank open, and we have kindergarten prep, as Sandy Cooper mentioned. And in addition to it, we're working to reopen our medical clinic in partnership with Dignity Health and also our restorative dental care. So quite a few different programs going on that we're working on bringing back safely so we can really reach those families in need. And I think sitting around the table with the other directors on this call has really helped us share that information in a way that can reach those families most in need. So thank you.
Can I just interrupt real quick? Katie, the last thing you said, restorative, I missed that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we're working. We have a restorative dental clinic with a partnership with St. Vincent de Paul at Phoenix.
Right.
Yeah. So we are working on bringing back the restorative clinic. We phased our dental reopening back in because, as I'm sure you can imagine, dental, because there is work in a child's mouth involved in it, involves a lot of safety measures and precautions and PPE usage. And so we decided to start with preventive because it's a lower risk service, and then slowly work our way back up to restorative services again.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Ms. Vargas.
Good evening, members of the board. This is Brenda Vargas, proud Director of School Counseling and Social Services. Thank you this evening. Thank you, Ms. Cooper, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you to my colleagues who have really done a good job of answering that question, Mr. Evans, regarding collaboration. I really believe that collaboration first starts with really modeling it. And I think it's really important to note that our school counselors, our social workers, and our student services coordinators have been working well and through the summer to collaborate together to bring really informative and very essential lessons, Tier 1 and Tier 2, to our students that they will be receiving and have been receiving throughout this virtual learning. With that said, I do believe that the additional piece of us meeting as a task force has certainly helped, and we've also met individually with different groups in order to really move forward in having some really good dialogue, focused, actionable steps in order to move forward and really getting the important work done for our students. So this collective support system that we have and that we have created for our students, as well as what's also being modeled in our schools, is something that we're working hard to address, as Ms. Cooper has already shared with you.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Abby Druck.
Good evening. It's nice to be able to have this opportunity tonight. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Castile, for having us tonight. I feel really fortunate in this group because I do literally get to work with each and every one on a regular basis. And they've done a fantastic job explaining a lot of the trainings that we've already put out this year for each of their departments. So my piece in that is kind of helping with the logistics, and as a task force, we've been identifying kind of the priority list of which trainings need to be rolled out when, and then working through vendors. We have partnerships through our RFP, and then professional development that we need to attack kind of in-house with our experts. And we've really used a blend of both already this year. So where we've kind of had to get creative from the professional development end has to do more with time and space during COVID. So we have gotten really good at developing some virtual pieces to these trainings. We've done some that are completely asynchronous for different departments, and then some that are a hybrid of putting some information in front of our staff that is all virtual and then getting together to dissect that information. A lot of Dr. Salu's trainings have been done via Teams with small group breakouts for discussion and things like that. So we certainly have learned a lot about different formats of professional development and all the topics on the task force. But everybody's done a fantastic job of helping identify the priorities and determining what's most important to get out when.
Thank you, Ms. Strack.
Mr. Evans, did that conclude your questions?
Wow, no, it didn't conclude my questions, but that's probably the best answer I've ever had. Thank you all. That's amazing. Thank you.
Did you want to ask anything else?
I'll hold.
Okay.
I'll hold because I'm sure some of my other questions will come up. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Bruner.
I know everyone else has said it, but I do want to thank everybody, especially Sandy, for this massive task that you've been charged with. And I just appreciate everyone's willingness and energy to contribute and work together and make the systems more efficient so that we can do even more for our kids and for our families and communities. And since this is Suicide Prevention Awareness Week, I don't know the official title, something like that. I think it's especially relevant. I just wanted to ask a few questions, and I'm not sure which individuals would answer, but if anyone could jump in. So there's been so much that's been embedded for our elementary students. It's been amazing. Responsive classroom and all kinds of social and emotional lessons being embedded into the morning meeting and even into the curricula. And so I was wondering what that looks like. I know we have a lot of resources like online, or we have counselors that maybe have groups once every couple weeks meeting, or those kind of things. And I was just curious how we are embedding some of the mental health aspects, not just the suicide awareness aspects, into the curriculum. Or maybe we've looked at this already when we looked at novels. I know we looked at the equity piece, and I was wondering if we were looking at that through the lens of equity for people with mental health issues as well, being represented in our novels and in our, all the other ways that we've looked at this. Have we looked at it from the mental health perspective as well?
Yes, I may defer to, anyone can jump in because it could be Mr. Rother or Mr. Gilbert. I was looking quickly. I just want you to know that, and I will share a little bit with what I know our high schools are doing with their counselors, because I think they are very actively engaged. I know that our high school counselors have spent a little more time with scheduling as students have moved back and forth, so that's taken a little bit more of their time than maybe is impacted at elementary. But I also know that I heard from our high school principals what our counselors are doing to connect with students. And I just want to answer the question is, when we talk about equity, we are talking about each one of these. So when equity is in the room, we're really just talking about all these different groups and whatever barrier it happens to be. And that is what we're embedding across the board for in the kind of under the umbrella of equity. Ms. Vargas, would you like to say anything else about what our counselors are doing?
Certainly, Ms. Cooper. And thank you, Ms. Bruner, members of the board, for that question. In regards to specifically high school, and I'm hoping you can hear me. I think the video is a little bit delayed. All of our student wellness pieces that are embedded into the Education, Career, and Action Plan presentation. In that presentation, it's delivered 9 through 12. All of the high schools collectively, department chairs have sat together, and this started last year, in which we all agreed to certain areas of the student wellness plan, what would be delivered. For example, and I know that you have a summary of this as well. I believe I provided it to Ms. Cooper, but we first start off with our student wellness page as an introduction as far as what are signs and symptoms. In addition to, we have snippets of multimedia where it's highly high interest for students and relatable, where we share signs of someone struggling and what that looks like, how to help a friend, how to start a conversation if you're concerned about someone. No need to be an expert. What does it mean to be a good friend? How to start a conversation. I'm just kind of going down the list here. In addition to, we deliver, obviously, curriculum signs of symptoms of suicide in 10th grade. In 11th grade this past year, we trained every single junior student in all of our high schools in the Safe Talk, which is an evidence-based program that I'm aware of. We are the only East Valley High School to do that with our students. In addition, we also have adopted the AFSP, which is the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention video for our 12th graders. We know it's a big transition time with lots of deadlines and lots of different stressors for our students in the 12th grade. So our students are receiving this, just to summarize, Ms. Bruner, through the ECAP presentation, which is our Education Career Action Plan, embedded with those pieces. I hope that answers your question.
It does in part, for sure, and I appreciate all the detail and all the work that went into this. I guess I'm just throwing out there to consider maybe in the next year or two as we move forward, if there are ways within courses like health to not just have what are the signs of suicide, but what do we do to protect our mental health? Like the many factors that are preventative. And I think some health teachers are already doing that, and maybe we could just solidify that a little bit more. Not just, once you're at the breaking point, what does that look like? But how can we prevent that in the first place? And what are all the healthy habits that we can develop and skills that we can develop? If we could embed that a little bit more in the health class. And I'm just throwing this out there, maybe there are some staff members already doing this. And, I get secondhand information from students and, my own child and, his friends and whatnot. But it seems like that might be something we could explore for the junior high and the high school kids, to kind of embed those preventative things a little bit more. At least from, my limited exposure to the kids I've talked to, if they're being exposed to it, they're not remembering it. So, and that may not be our fault at all, right? But just throwing that out there, maybe there's a couple more times we can embed those preventative things into the curriculum somehow, and just throwing that idea out there, and do what you will with it. But thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you again to everyone for this very important work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Brunner. So I also have a couple of questions. So families that may not have been personally contacted, that have needs, how do they let those needs be known to the district? What's the procedure for that?
I did fail to mention that at the June, the 1st of July, this group of professionals actually sent a letter to every single family to say, here are all the resources. Please contact any one of us to let you know. So, and that may be something we need to do, communicate several times, because I think sometimes people don't know who to ask for help. But the go-to person would be their principal at the school. The principal at the school would be, and the principal will reach out to one of these departments to access, if they don't have the resources at their site, to access the resources. So I would encourage any family just to talk to their principal or their teacher, someone at their building.
Okay, thank you, because I was, you get something, maybe a letter, and then you can't find it, and
right.
and oh, well, they said something about that. Now, what am I supposed to do? Because I don't know. So, I think that's good information that we may want to periodically refresh families' memories with that type of information on how they can access some help. I do have a question for Katie. Katie, what needs do you have at the care center such for let's say for the food bank for the pre-Thanksgiving, and what can our community do to help, perhaps with some type of donations? What's the greatest need for that?
Madam President, thank you for asking. Our Thanksgiving distribution will happen on Saturday, November 14th this year. And so our biggest need, as I'm sure you can imagine, will be for food items to provide to our families. A list of those items is actually available on our Facebook page and will be going out district-wide to all employees within the next day or two. But primarily, I anticipate our biggest need being whole frozen turkeys, as well as looking at items including canned vegetables and pumpkin pie mix and dessert mixes. We really make an effort to provide food so that the family can take their food home and prepare an entire Thanksgiving meal. And so those are the primary items that at this point we're looking for, but we will keep that list updated on Facebook as we move forward. And then as we move into December, we will be doing a toy distribution for children in need within Chandler from birth through 18. And so we will also have a need for new unwrapped gifts for those children. Last year, I know we served a little over 1,000 children, so I anticipate we'll have around the same amount. And we do that event in partnership with Chandler Fire Department, so we'll be sure to promote that information so that those within our community who have the means to assist and are interested can get that information easily.
Thank you, Katie. And then
thank you.
One other question, which I think is who hasn't spoken about anything tonight, is I guess this one is for Terry Locke, because I think I got some information about a suicide prevention community event. And could you explain how someone registers for that and what's going on?
It's just a press conference tomorrow, not going to be an audience per se.
I see, okay.
We'll have about 5 to 10 experts. Annie Cordasco, who used to work for us, as one of the panelists tomorrow. We'll have Brenda and some of her team there tomorrow as spectators, but it's basically a media event at Hamilton High School tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
And do you know, will it be live streamed somewhere?
It is. It'll be on the governor's page, the same place they do all their press conferences. It'll be on their newsroom place, and the media will cover it as well. So, yep.
Thank you so much. I think that will be very informative for our community members, and I'm glad that Hamilton's able to host that tomorrow. Are there any other questions? Mr. Evans, you said you had maybe one more?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Madam President. This is a little bit long, but I know that Monica Ramirez has talked to me about this. Ms. Vargas has talked to me. Dr. Salou has all talked about the fact that students need a relationship with a caring adult on campus. And actually, Tanya, this is for you too, because you talked about the training that security guards are going through, and I know that a lot of students, that's the person that they trust on campus is a security guard, because they see them multiple times during the day. But so for creating a sense of self-awareness, as Dr. Salou talked about, basically dignity, I guess, or belonging within students, if we recognize a behavior or a suggestion through you talked about mediation spaces, and I know students talk individually with counselors or that trusted adult. If you recognize a behavior or some suggestion of, self-harm, pretty much a call to help by a student, how do you facilitate getting student help without violating their trust? Because that communication that they have with somebody, obviously they don't want that used against them, but at the same time they're calling out for help. And then, are there similar services that we offer for staff members? And hopefully that made sense.
Good. I'm going to ask Ms. Vargas to answer the one about the students, and then I will help with the one about the staff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for that question. In regards to students, one of the things that we communicate to students, and it's printed, and many counselors have this also in their offices, their right to privacy and confidentiality, except in times when someone is being hurt or is endangered in themselves or others. So we make sure to have that somewhere posted in our space when students are visiting with us. We also have that on all of our our counselors have been working hard, and social workers in creating virtual offices. That's also posted on there. But I think it's a very fine line, and I think being really honest with the student in creating space, not only to allow them to, share, but also to allow them to extend that invitation to allow you to help. And sometimes helping the student means we have to seek out assistance from others. And the most important thing is reaching out to parents and their guardian and making sure that they are aware of what that student needs. And, of course, managing any support systems that may be in place, either through their health insurance and or working with community agencies to provide that additional support and follow through for the mental health supports, especially if we're talking about a student that is having any suicidal ideation. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Evans.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks. That's a concern for parents and for kids, of course.
Sandy, this is Monica Romero. I just wanted to add, Mr. Evans, that to be able to measure our success is not by whom we exclude, but rather by whom we include. As we had mentioned earlier regarding our special population friend of ours and her team did an excellent job as far as reaching out to those students. And sometimes once it gets to our area with our KIT kids, we have to be able to make sure we have those relationships and we're able to meet with guardians, whether it be special populations or just general ed students. And from there, you're able to communicate what's best. We also have community members, City of Chandler Service Club, East Valley Assistance League. We have so many, Si Se Puede, individuals in the community who also have volunteered to be mentors. And when those relationships are built, that's where those students then become more, I guess you could say, their self-esteem and their confidence grows.
Thank you, Ms. Romero.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Romero.
And just with the employees, I would say, too, building that culture that they feel like they belong, they're safe. It's critical at the school level, at a district level. But beyond that, we do have an employee assistance program for all of our employees. It's not just for employees who are insured on the district insurance. And they have access to free counseling 24/7. They can reach out for any of their needs. And in fact, it's something that we advertise on a real regular basis in our HR newsletter. We've given out cards to our principals so that somebody comes in and their needs are really beyond what maybe the school can provide or they're capable of providing. They can refer them to an expert and they can know they can get that help without a cost, to the employee.
And Ms. Cooper, if I could just add one item to that, because we're not just sharing the fact that we have these resources and services regarding EAP to our staff. We know when our staff is well, our students are well taken care of. We're actually putting it into practice. And when we've lost one of our own, we are actually, scheduling time so that our staff has already scheduled time so that they can actually reach out to EAP and have that counseling grief support, and it's immediate. So we are making use of that and really communicating and really, I would say, challenging that stigma around mental health and making it okay to talk about the fact that it's okay to reach out, whether it's through EAP or a friend or, reach out for help, and allowing people to have these conversations and giving them permission to have it.
Thank you. That's a very important point. Thank you, Ms. Vargas.
Thank you again, Mrs. Cooper. We appreciate the wonderful update, and all of the team, Mrs. Marshall, Ms. Romero, Ms. Smith, Dr. Salou, Katie, Kale. I never can pronounce your name right, Katie.
Kale.
Kale, Brenda Vargas, and Abby Druck. Thank you so much for joining us by phone this evening. And Mrs. Cooper, again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. And I think Mr. Rother, no, I'm kidding. Dr. Nance.
That makes me laugh, Madam President. Okay, on our consent agenda tonight, we have our out-of-state field trip pre-planning forms for Basha High and Perry High for dates in spring. Following board approval, we will monitor trip arrangements and bring the board a summary of final travel arrangements quarterly. Final trip approval will be determined on a case-by-case basis and will be contingent upon current health guidelines. For monetary gifts, we have we've been generously donated. We've received $77,782.34. The list is included for your review. Under donations, we have items given. These are athletic equipment to Chandler Schools, totaling value of $5,130.04. Sorry. We have our agreement between our College Knowing and Going Initiative college readiness teams and CUSD Castile High School for the 2021 school year. The purpose of this agreement is to develop comprehensive, data-driven, student-centered college-going cultures in which stakeholders across the community work collaboratively to ensure Arizona students graduate high school and are ready for post-secondary options. Castile, if you remember, was one of 16 pilot high schools across Arizona chosen to participate in this project in the 1920 school year. An initial MOU was brought and approved last year on November 13th at a board meeting. Due to the success of this pilot project, the program will be continued for the 2021 school year. We have a revision to two policies. These were both brought to you as information items on August 26th. We have a revision to IHA, the Basic Instructional Program. Arizona School Boards Association recommended these changes to the program in relation to House Bill 2625 and added ARS 1319. It specifies that September 25th in each year shall be observed as Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day. It's not a legal holiday. ARS 15203 and A570101 were amended to state that the State Board of Education shall develop a list of recommended resources relating to civics education that align with these standards prescribed by the State Board of Education in Social Studies. And they will establish a process that allows public schools to recommend resources for additions to the list. Additionally, on Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day, each public school in this state shall dedicate the majority of the school day to civics education. We also have a revision to Policy KB, which is parental involvement in education. The School Boards Association recommended these changes in accordance with Senate Bill 1061 and added the section 15249 to the statutes relating to the Department of Education, and it states that the Department of Education shall establish and post on its website a statutory handbook of parental rights. Each school district and charter school in the state shall prominently post on a publicly accessible portion of its website a link to the statutory handbook of parental rights. We recommend approval as proposed by ASBA to both of these policies. And finally, Human Resources, we have attached a list of employment separation and compensation for your review. Recommend approval of the consent agenda as listed.
Thank you, Dr. Nance. I will just, I think the tongue got twisted just a little bit on the agreement for College Knowing. You had mentioned 1920 rather than 2019 as a year. So
My apologies.
That's okay. So with that correction, could I please have a motion to approve our consent agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. McGee. All those in favor of approving our consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And Dr. Nance, thank you for covering and presenting tonight on this. Our next item is our action item, and it is approval of the School Facilities Board 2021 Capital Plan. Mrs. Berry will be presenting this evening.
Madam President, members of the board, Tonight, the Chandler Unified School District fiscal year 21 capital plan has been submitted to the Arizona School Board, or Arizona School Facilities Board. This is the draft capital plan and may be revised at a later date. Now, I want to kind of go over a little bit about the capital plan. This was extremely important to us as we were growing, and we still are growing in our secondary arena, which is 9th through 12th, and we are finishing our high school currently, which we were funded on last legislative session. But it's a formality. This report is required. It actually got back to September the 1st due, where we submit it online and then we can revise it at any point. It used to be in July, and then that got changed. We do not qualify for any new funding this upcoming year. We are only growing in our secondary arena, and we got funded last year based on the growth for this year. So really, this is just a formality, and actually there's even some revisions made to this. I gave you the copy we submitted in, and then tomorrow we're going to have Amber reject it because there's some things that need to be changed on there just to meet the deadline of submitting in. We will go over with the governing board in October our actual capital plan, our bond updates, our override, all that information when we do the AFR, and you'll see a whole presentation like you do annually on that. A couple things about the report. It was really hard this year to figure out some of the numbers, and originally we thought we were supposed to put in ADM because some of the instructions were that way, but if you look at pages 2, you will see on page 2 and 3 where we started putting in the numbers for our elementary and our secondary. And on page 2, you will see that we have approximately 20,047 elementary schools, which we knew, even with applied economics, that we would be down because of the birth rates and just because of the competition within Chandler, within the private schools and charter schools. That number, though, is down more than we have been. So the number that we used for fiscal 21 was on August 28th, how many enrolled students we had on August 28th. What we used from fiscal year 22 and beyond, we used applied economics numbers because, to be honest, we don't have any good trend information. And so Amber and I decided that we were going to stick with applied economics numbers until we can come back and give you updated numbers in that category, just for formalities and knowing why we got the numbers that we got. On page 3, you'll see the secondary, which is 7th through 8th graders through junior high. We're at 7,488, slightly lower than where we were projected, and I think we're about 100 short compared to last year. And then you'll see also on page 3 a summary of fiscal year 21, 17,019 students. That's your 9th through 12th. That's up compared to last fiscal year. We're up about 600 students in that area. We were hoping for a few hundred more in there, but we're still really happy with our secondary growth and the reason for the additional high school that we have going in that will be finished at the end of the fiscal year. The only other thing is on page 4, there's a weight room addition, which is Chandler High School, ACP Oakland. It is not new space, it's just, that's why it says false when it says replacement space. It's because it just is replacement, ultimately. And then Weinberg Elementary, we renovated. The other purpose of this report is to update all square footage on a regular basis. These two items weren't on last year's report, even though, for example, the new Rice Elementary is on that report. And so it just adds any of the construction we had that might have changed or altered square footage. So just a simple report to update square footage, very important. And if we were a growing district, this report is the information that we use with the economist at the demographer at the school facilities board, and ultimately they use that, they compare their data, and then we determine if we get funding for the next fiscal year. We are not eligible for funding, we are not growing additionally compared to what we are already funded at, so it's just a formality at this point. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Berry.
You're welcome.
Could you just review what you said about the weight room? You said that was replacement space, but it says it's false.
Yes, and I'm going to let, actually, Frank, if you don't mind, can you explain the space, the weight room, what we've done with the weight room over at Chandler High and ACP Oakland?
We, in theory, just, the footprint of the old weight room was 6,960 square feet. Their weight room itself, the physical structure was about just a little over 4,000 square feet, which is under what the other weight rooms across the district are. and it really wasn't laid out functionally. The balance of that square footage was outside space, which was basically not usable under an awning. We demolished the building, we upgraded power where we needed, we upgraded the fire alarm control panel where we needed, and built a new facility. The new weight room is approximately 4,167 square feet. Then we have another approximately 1,700 square feet of educational space and a bank of women's and men's restrooms. So that's what we did at the Chandler High Weight Room, which is located on the Oakland campus.
I guess what I'm confused about a little bit is if that was replaced, that square or that building that we tore down and replaced it with the other one, why does the capital plan say under replacement space it says false?
And if I could be wrong with how we interpreted the instructions on that, but ultimately, if you had replacement space, but you added it somewhere and you were just replicating it, but putting it somewhere else, then you'd say yes. If you took out the building, then you put no, so they know to add it or not to the square footage. So it was just on the instructions, and it could be right or wrong. They'll let us know that. They'll actually call and review it with us, but we just base it on the instructions. So
oh, okay. That's why I was
confused.
I was very confused on that.
They're going to, Mrs. Mazen, the SFB is going to compare that to what's in their inventory.
Okay.
And that'll tell them whether it's an add, a deduct, or a false as far as additional square footage goes.
Okay, thank you. Could I get a motion on the approval of the School Facilities Board capital plan for 2021?
Madam President. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. This is Mrs. McGee, and I would like to make a motion to approve Chandler Unified School District 2021 capital plan.
I'll second.
Are there any other questions? Mrs. Bruner? No? Oh, I do have another one. I'm sorry. Can you explain when it says tuition in and out, on where it says open enrollment and the student counts, all the way over to the right, all those numbers are all the way over to the right. Are those students that are coming into our district? Then why are they under the out column, or sort of the out column?
So they will actually report when they go in. They're in a formula. It's just printed like this. Those are in. So we know exactly where they came from. We don't really know. We can sometimes tell if they pulled their file where they're at their other district, but ultimately this information is for how many how many enrolled students are from out of our district. That's the important part on this report. So it's ultimately the districts they're in. It's just the way that it prints.
Okay, that's because I was like, we keep track of that.
That helps them project. Okay. So the reason that's so important is they want to know if we're growing and if we're attracting kids from outside the district too. So it's just that overall number, because then that helps you determine if you're going to grow.
Yeah, that's kind of, I've kind of figured those, I mean, we'd seen these enough that we pretty much knew that these were students that were coming into our district, but it was, I was trying to figure out why, why these print out so strangely each time, so.
And it prints it for us once we're in there, so I apologize.
Okay, are there any other questions? Mrs. McGee or Mr. Evans?
No.
No, you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the capital plan for fiscal year 2021, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Evans, was that an aye?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Next, Dr. Castile had to go, so we will go ahead and, Dr. Nance, did Dr. Castile leave some things for you to say on her behalf? Thank you.
He did. Thank you, Madam President. I have two things that I'd like to share with you tonight. The Chandler Education Foundation will hold its annual golf tournament this Friday at Troon Whirlwind. The format's a little different this year with staggered tee times between 7 and 9 a.m., and the golfers will not congregate for lunch. We're so appreciative of everyone participating to help raise money for the foundation to raise money for student scholarships. And finally, we're preparing for the return of pre-kindergarten through second grade and our elementary special classes on Monday, followed by grades 3 through 6 on September 21st. And the teachers, staff, and administrators are excited to see the students returning to school.
Thank you, Dr. Nance.
You're welcome.
Do any of our board members have comments? Why don't we start with our phone individuals? Mrs. McGee, do you have any comments for this evening?
I do not, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
No, thank you, Madam President.
Okay. Ms. Love?
Thank you for that, and thank you for all the presentations this evening. I apologize, my glasses are falling off because masks are hard with glasses. But I just have like one statement, and then I will pass it on. So, I've been getting a lot of criticism for having a political agenda, and I wanted to address that tonight. So, to all the folks who feel I have a political agenda behind being vocal about anti-racism and equity, I will not apologize for asking for the inclusion of our Black, Indigenous students of color, nor will I apologize for asking for the inclusion of our LGBTQ students, nor our SPED students. To me, inclusivity is not a political agenda. From the social work background, it's called being a decent human being. And I will not apologize for advocating for our students who feel unheard or who get caught up in the midst of our opportunity gaps. Those students have been asking to be seen and heard, and I will always do that. And if that is upsetting, I apologize, but I will not stop speaking and advocating for those students, as it is my social work duty, and it is also my board duty. And that's all that I have this evening, but I would just like for everybody to reflect, why does advocating for groups who feel unheard make us upset? And do we need to do our own work behind that? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Mrs. Bruner? No comments? Okay, with that, I'm just going to say thank you for joining us this evening, and we will be back, I believe, on September 23rd in 2 weeks. And thank you very much, and this meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.